Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk. I hope what I'm sharing with you in this presentation is of help, independently of your mentoring experience or familiarity with the game audio field. So, all that said, I shall introduce myself. I'm Jorge, currently a software engineer in audio based in Madrid, Spain. I started working in games in 2008 at EA, a short stint in the localization studio the company has in my city. And I've also worked for some mid-sized and large companies like Codemasters, Activision, Mercury Steam, and Zynga on some high-budget games, or AAA, as we call it in the industry, like FC, called previously FIFA, and Guitar Hero Live. Something personal, from time to time, I also enjoy hiking, reading about varied topics, and traveling. So here you can see me in one of my summer trips. So first off, why become a mentor? There is a bit an old study from 2018 referenced by Forbes in the link below. A couple of key takeaways are that not many people have mentors, and most of the mentoring relationships develop organically versus in more structured programs. Now, why am I giving this talk? I actually started mentoring formally in 2018. So, as part of some game audio mentoring programs, perhaps I should have titled this talk Learnings from 7 Years of Being a Mentor in Game Audio, but a decade sounded much better. So, I hope you forgive me in this case. Anyway, the motivations behind this talk have been the same. When I started asking around what was required to be given the senior title and benefits, a common theme people mentioned was becoming a mentor. So in some way, this was part of my selfish initial motivation for becoming one. Also, developing leadership skills while learning from others and having a sneak peek on management were driving motivators. In my own career at companies such as EA or Activision and others, mentors paved the way for my success. So I became a mentor at first because I saw it as necessary for my career, and that's a really valid reason to start on the path. But as I went down the path, I came to value more being able to give back to others. With this talk, I will be also trying to convince you very hard to become a mentor or to do more mentoring. Let's see if I can do it. Here are some of my learnings about mentoring modalities after a few years. These guidelines have also come from the Code of Conduct and some of the previous mentoring programs I've been part of. So on one hand, we have structured. Perhaps in part, the ADC mentoring program is one of them, as it encourages to set an agenda and goals and some initial expectations, which help to set the stage for the mentoring relationship. Also, continued feedback is mentioned, and I've seen it's also helpful for some mentees. On the other hand, a less structured approach is also very helpful. More ad hoc, casual, informal, organic conversations that can really happen anywhere between coffee chats in the office or on Slack or Teams. I've experienced both approaches in the past, and I personally think that while the less structured approach has worked better for most of my mentees, and also when having mentors myself, I feel that having at least some structure and expectations set at the beginning also helps to have a more fruitful mentoring relationship. So, what a good mentoring relationship looks like? Well, ideally, we want to reach a win-win situation where we have mutual trust and respect, supported by defined boundaries and expectations. We also want to experience professional interactions that at the same time are personals, since we are all humans in the end, right? We also need to be mindful of personal requirements. For instance, I've had some neurodivergent mentees in the past, and I've tried to accommodate as much as I could to help with their schedules by offering flexibility on meeting times, for instance. Most importantly, I believe that a healthy mentoring relationship should be one where both parties are learning from each other. So, in some way, it's less one sided. Now, what a great mentor looks like. In this slide, I have a list of items that I have compiled from some manual and recommendations, and they have been a guiding set of values for me. I should say that some of them have been more aspirational than practical, but I also think they are also key for becoming a good mentor. So, for leadership skills, of course, listening, having empathy, and patience are key while questioning mentees on their assumptions. We ideally want to guide and promote independent thinking and facilitate conversations or career decisions. One of the things that many mentees also like to hear are past experiences so that they can have a better understanding on your own path and how it can relate to them. Additionally, behaviors that we want to promote are open and honest communication while giving honest and actionable feedback. Not less important is to celebrate the achievements of mentees and to advocate for them when possible and necessary. The last few slides have been a generic introduction to mentorship, and so far I've talked about it as a general topic. But what about game audio in particular? Let's take a look. In my view, game audio has its challenges and opportunities, as with any other creative and tech-based industry. How does this relate to mentoring? Game audio is niche compared to other tech fields like web development. We also should have in mind that usually job descriptions, as in other tech industries, could be vague and perhaps don't help to understand the roles we can find in the games industry. I will touch on this later. Audio is just another pillar, an important one in games development. I'm just mentioning it here because having this in mind can help differentiate opportunities with others in audio and music technology. The final product that a games company creates is a game and not a piece of audio technology or tool. But thankfully, in the last decade, audio has become increasingly important and identified as key for the success of games in many studios, which is great for us working in the field. Also here, I will also like to say that there are opportunities for doing interesting work while working closely with other game disciplines like animation or graphics. There is also a high potential to innovate in the field, one of my personal motivators that has kept me in this industry so far. Okay, so what are the typical individual contributor roles I see that you can find advertised in game studios? If you want to be mentors in game audio, first we need to understand the different roles. I will say that these are the big four with different flavors and definitions. Some companies use sound and audio interchangeably for designers working in content creation, while as part of the audio art part of the game, there are even some companies like EA that call their sound designers audio artists. On the other hand, we have the most technical roles, perhaps closer to the audience in this conference, and so people that you are attending, people like you that are programmers and software engineers. So about the design roles, we can usually find a spectrum of technical skills. This varies depending on the company and expectations could be different. More details on what each of these roles do later in this presentation. If we talk about programmers and software engineers, there is an agreement in the industry that there are at least 3 different disciplines or sub-specializations. People working more on the gameplay side of the game, others working on tools and pipelines, and then we can also find people working on rendering and DSP technology, for instance. All are required to make a great game, but the need of specialists for each area will most of the times depend on the budget, the scope, and even the company culture. You can also find people in the industry that can do a bit of everything, that's great, or that have a broad knowledge across specializations. I also wanted to focus here on the fine line that technical sound designers and audio programmers, and to some extent audio software engineers, can find themselves. At least what I have experienced, the title sometimes doesn't matter much, as both of these roles could be doing by similar jobs in a game studio sometimes. Now that we know the different roles, we can see different career paths and how people will need to develop in different ways. Here, I wanted to share some of the career paths I've seen my mentees taken and some ideas around the advice I try to give people that is interested in breaking into the industry. From left to right, I laid it out intentionally. We can go from more design roles to the most programming and technical roles. This isn't meant to be the only valid career path, as it's just an example. Please bear in mind that these descriptions are meant to be more about the roles stated in the center orange timeline, not much about the titles. For instance, a sound designer could be also doing technical sound design as part of their role. The majority of mentees and people I have mentored in the last decade have fallen on technical sound design, audio programming, and audio software engineering. So what if some person wanted to work as any of those? Here's a personal opinion on what are the entry points to jobs with an example that is illustrated in this diagram. My motivations in mentioning these are to help clarify what are the possibilities of getting a job in a now very competitive market and volatile industry. In my view, someone wanting to get a job as a technical sound designer should already know about audio and tech fundamentals, show an interest and skills in the technicalities of games and game design knowledge, as well as familiarity with middleware and integration, for instance. They should be interested in developing programming skills, as many, but not all, sound designers find often themselves writing scripts or small tools, or even writing small extensions or plugins in C++ for game engines and middleware. In any case, technical sound design roles can vary a lot across companies, some focusing more on the actual design of the game using node-based editors and much less on programming. On the other hand, and I will refer to audio programmer and audio software engineer interchangeably here, since both titles in different companies could be very similar or even the same, a strong candidate should already have programming experience or an engineering background. Unfortunately, junior or intern positions in the industry are scarce, so I try to be mindful of that when giving advice. Another entry point some colleagues have shared for audio programming is audio technology quality assurance Q&A. All that said, just to give here an example, one of my past mentees did the transition from sound design role to technical sound design and then to audio programming. Unfortunately, getting a programming position these days without any professional programming experience is mostly unlikely. So the advice I try to give my mentees is to carve a path progressively. Of course, as in everything, there could be outliers and exceptions, but in my view, making the transition from sound designer to audio programmer takes time. It could take a long time, and it isn't trivial if starting with programming from the scratch. Which leads to some of the practical approaches I found for cultivating unique talents. So here I wanted to use an analogy. My partner and I have some plants in our apartment that we have been taking care of for more than a half a year now. So I thought that my experience with them could be used for helping me to make a point. First plant on the left mostly has had the need of getting water. It has beautiful, gorgeous flowers. Looking at it and giving it water works great, and it's currently thriving. The plant on the center, at some point in time, started to deflate and go down. One day, my partner said, okay, maybe it needs more space. So I moved it to a bigger flower pot. After a few days, we noticed that it started to grow more and still needs water too, of course. The rightmost plant has been a challenge. It has been always small, giving some flowers only during spring. Unfortunately, giving it just water didn't work out. We had regular check-ins, and unfortunately, it didn't survive. I hope this doesn't trigger you much. A learning here for me is that we should have investigated what it needed more earlier in time. We should have had perhaps more regular check-ins. So how does this relate to mentoring? Now let's talk about my mentoring experience for cultivating unique talents and how we can also act as gardeners with mentees. I think what I found with time is that helping the mentee identify their skills, strengths, and needs is more than not a key to success in mentoring. Asking the mentee and observing them, asking some questions to gather what they are good at, what their are interests, what do they need to make a living. The intersection of the three is one formula I found helpful, and I think it's also an enabler. There are some texts and guidance you can find online that talk about purpose. In my view, this is key for a sustainable career. If you are an experienced programmer or engineer, you have seen this in yourself. There are always ups and downs and challenges to face. For me personally, having a purpose has been helping me. Talking to others, to colleagues and friends in other industries like education, also mention purpose as a good tool to motivate people long term. I also need to remind myself sometimes that different people can have, of course, different purposes in life, and that is completely fine. So, what are some of the tools to help mentees find their interests, learnings, or find maybe their purpose? I've split them into 3 different categories, and I know some other people might have other tools. So I would love to learn what you do. I found that supporting materials, encouraging opportunities research, and network development are perhaps the most useful. YouTube videos and presentations from conferences like this, ADC or GDC, books like the fantastic Game Audio Programming series edited by Guy Sonberg, or attending conferences and meetups around the world are great resources for learning and for connecting with peers. Now that we are getting short of time, I wanted to share some of the recent feedback, anonymized, I got from previous mentees. Here are some of the highlights to demonstrate if what I have presented works or not. These are positive comments that show a testament to the benefits mentees can get from a mentoring relationship. And they also motivate me to keep me doing mentoring. And these are some areas of improvement, which have also been opportunities for learning and growth for me. Common theme is that working on a particular project together seems to be very valuable, though sometimes it's challenging with time constraints. On the other hand, there are people who prefer more structure, which also helps everybody with busy lives. So, to wrap up, please get involved. I think a common theme I've regularly heard for the organizers of mentoring programs is the lack of mentors to fulfill the demand. In audio, and of course, in game audio in particular, there are usually more mentees than mentors. So just remember that mentoring is win-win. Both parties are learning. It's a great opportunity to give back and pay it forward to the community. And also, mentoring helps make a more inclusive, strong, and supportive industry. So please consider helping out. Now, I would like to thank Guy Sonberg from Blizzard Entertainment and Colin Walder from CD Projekt Red for their feedback and help on this presentation. And I will be happy to take any questions if you drop me a message or find me online on Discord or Gather. Thank you so much. And here I have some mentoring materials in case that you need them. Thank you.